Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to view Jackals from 2017. So, I liked this film simply because I like this kind of movie. To me, this reminded me of movies like The Strangers, or it reminded me of Your Next, or it reminded me of The Purge, like the first one, where uh, how that would be connected would be we would have a number of kids who were to go on and all have like similar masks making their way to their neighbors to want to break into their place. And so that seems, of course, fairly similar to Jackals. Not, of course, a world in chaos within one day a year, not like that. So, uh, I also liked how this movie, of course, was shot. Because, of course, the way this movie was shot was to be fairly similar to the Michael Myers Halloween movie, the original one, where in the very beginning of it, we have this like POV shot, point of view shot, that is to be in first person. And like we have this whole scene play out. It's like, okay, what's going on? And then we're like, oh, okay, Halloween. And then we end up kind of cutting past that first play out to then go into the rest of the movie and kind of shoot it like in a normal way of which that the movie is to be. Kind of like I think Deadly Virtues was the same, and I ended up liking that also. So now that I've gone on and said that, I think it's about time to go on and say certain negatives about this movie that may go on and feel possibly like a nitpick, but I don't really care. First off, this movie tells us that this movie is based on true events. Sure. And I would always go on and gripe about that when someone is to slap that on a movie title to get you more interested in it, or is to try to be a marketing campaign thing to then have you be like, well, all right, like I need to go on and see this movie because it's based on true events. That could be a selling point, which, when really looking at this film, probably 97% of this movie is all fiction, and like 3% of it is some idea that somebody could insert into certain lines or certain script parts of this movie to then have it seem believable. Because, of course, the writer would go on and say for this film that some of this stuff was taken from the 80s and 90s, some like unorthodox cult-like things, kind of like tattoos on chests and stuff like that, um, and trying to like figure out certain like cult-like things to kind of add into this film. But other than that, like the rest of this movie is all fiction. So it's like, okay, that sucks. Like really stretching really to say that this is based on true events. So, but now on to the next thing. We have one character who we would naturally assume is, because they spend so much time on this character, it seems they give him a backstory more than anybody else in this film, and you would think with this character, he would be the turning of the tide to even things up for the good guys in this movie. And come to find out, that one character ends up metaphorically slipping on a banana peel in the early part of this film, to where I'm just like, what? They did what with this character? Man, wow. That sucked. But on top of that, we also had a character who is supposed to like showcase a tattoo in this film, and if I were to go on and go like this, would you be able to see a tattoo that's on my arm? Hey guys, can you see this tattoo? Why even have a part of the camera like show this tattoo to not have it really be seen well? Because they like refer to it later. Like it seems that this is to also like give a certain backstory to a character, and when looking at it, it's just like, what a waste of time to slap a tattoo on a person's arm for no one to really see what it really is. Feels like a waste. But again, other than that stuff, I really enjoyed this movie. The villains did creative things as far as like torture, and on like the hero side, they were to do some creative things with trying to defend themselves at certain points. And oh, you could almost say that this movie is somewhat similar to Straw Dogs, like where we get kind of more towards the end of that film, where we have James Marsden's character who's turning to his wife. He's like, "We gotta defend ourselves, honey," and like he goes on and just is like tossing like hot water and all these kind of things on James Woods' character. And he's like, "Ma." I like Straw Dogs. Straw Dogs is a really interesting film, and if you've never seen that, I like that movie also. So, teeing it up, what is this movie about? This movie is currently available on Tubi, Tubi. I think it's also available on Vudu, VUDU, and after that, if you cannot go on and find this movie, it may be available somewhere. I don't know. You can figure it out. But without a doubt, teeing it up, what is this movie about? So in the beginning of this film, we have a scene of which that is to be through the eyes of a killer, and really the characters that will be put in the beginning of this film won't be reused in some point in the later part of the movie. So let's kind of focus on the main story here. So, come to find out, we have this family that is trying to find their son, who it seems has gone on to fall into the wrong crowd. I was going to say clan at one point, but crowd. So this family is to try to retrieve their son, get him to this cabin to try to unbrainwash him. And it seems that the only person that can go on and do that is Stephen Dorff's character, who will go in more in specifics about him. And so, with them going on and trying to figure out a way to break Justin, it seems that the longer and longer this is to take, and the only one location for these people to really go to, because everything else is so far away from them, we then have the Jackals making their way to this cabin to go on and get their cult member back. And so the family has no idea how big these Jackals really are, how many of them are. And the further and further we go into this film, the more and more we see of them, to where it's like, oh, like, maybe we can just go on and even the odds with this group of people. But then the further the movie goes, it's like, oh no, there's even more of them. Oh crap. So, and plus we have no idea how skilled any number of these Jackal characters are. So, really when looking at it, like, we just have to really assess that that how are these people gonna put up a decent defense? So, in which, in all honesty, in this movie, they don't really put up a good showing. But still, I liked what they did in this movie, though. So, with that said, I think it's about time to just go into spoilers about this film and go into that double five time territory. Because it's about that time yet again to go into spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about that time to get to spoil this movie. So, in the beginning of the film, we have a guy named uh, Matteo, and or Matteo. So Matteo ends up going through and is to look under this thing to find this key, which the key looked a little weird. So the guy ends up making it through the house and is to find this couple in this bed, and he is to take these things of scissors and stab into them and kill them in their bed, and then is to move on to find Louisa, who he is to just turn on this light and wake her up. Louisa is to realize that the man in front of her is to be her lover, her boyfriend. And so Louisa is like, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing here? And all of a sudden, we have this woman who realizes that this man's hands are bloody, and she is like, oh my god, like, are you okay? Like, what's wrong? And then she is to possibly realize, wait a minute, like, did you go on and kill somebody? So she runs off to her parents' bedroom to find her parents dead, and now Louisa is teared and crying, and so we then have the killer who makes it into that bedroom and is to then go on and kill off this girl, and then we end up seeing him put on his jackal mask, and the scene just cuts. So, and I was like, oh, like the first time I watched this, I was like, what is going on? I'm so confused. Like the early parts of this movie, I was so confused about, and I had to like process it and just like, wait a minute, like what all happened in the beginning of this movie? Because I was so confused. But we'll continue to get confused. So all of a sudden, we have these two guys that are to be driving, and it seems that they drive and they realize that they have a flat tire. And so we have this guy, Justin, who is to realize that there is a big gash in his tire. And come to find out, there is to be these two men in this van, and they are to knock out one guy and they are to chloroform the other end being Justin. And so they grab Justin and they drag him off to be brought into this home. Come to find out, the two people in the ski masks are to be Jimmy and Andrew, the two men that are to be a part of this family that are trying to unbrainwash Justin, who is to be the guy they brought back. And so the other guy that was with Justin, they just beat him up and then kind of left him there, left him for the side of the road for, I guess, this guy to go on. And when he wakes up, to kind of call it in and have the rest of this group come after them. So we have Jimmy bringing in Justin into this one room, and so Jimmy is telling Justin, it's like, well, hey, Justin, yeah, like, like this is your father, and this is your brother, and this is your girlfriend, and she has a baby. And so Justin's like, well, who are you? It's like, well, I'm Jimmy. So, uh, trying to tell us who all these people are. And so we, of course, have Justin, who is just to call everyone pigs and that they'll be slaughtered. And we, of course, have Kathy, who's like, oh my god, like, that doesn't sound like my son. And so Jimmy, of course, is like, well, that's because what they did to him. They just brainwashed him, and so like we're gonna try as much as possible to like break through to him and figure out a way to get to him. So Jimmy then goes in there and is to just trying to break through Justin by just kind of giving him logic. And so Jimmy is to tell Justin, it's like, well, hey, do you really think that your like cult leader is to really like see you as a real benefit to his cult? Uh dude, you're just a pawn. Like he's gonna like you could die and he wouldn't think twice about it. So like Jimmy is trying to go on and tell Justin that the only reason why Justin was chosen is because of his family, and that his family was rich, and uh, that this family has connections. That's the only reason why Justin was really chosen here. Kind of really going out of his way to try and like tell this guy that like this cult is to probably at some point have a revolution within it to dwindle down the numbers, and Justin could be one of those guys. Could be like them trying to thin out the herd to get rid of some characters that aren't willing enough or something like that. So it seems that whatever Jimmy is to say is not convincing to Justin. And so if we already haven't had uh, Campbell, Justin's brother, who was to want to go on and punch him, hopefully punch the brainwashing out of him, we have Jimmy that is depressed, that it's like, well, hey, Samantha, maybe you should go up there and just try to talk to him and like do everything that we've planned. So when Jimmy was to go up there and to talk to Justin, Andrew noticed that Jimmy was to have this Semper Fi tattoo, which of course is to be tied to the Marines. And when Jimmy was to go on and talk to Justin, he ends up tying in the Marines and trying to come up with some common ground with Justin. So that way, then he can kind of twist and turn and try to make him logically think like, yeah, like your guys, they're not gonna care about you. They're not gonna be looking for you. So we have at one point where before Samantha goes on to speak with Justin, she was to give her baby to Kathy, and she was just trying to like do things to eat up time, like maybe watch some TV. Campbell ends up telling Samantha, it's like, well, hey, like we can't get TV signal here, so like don't even try. And so Samantha's like, well, since I can't watch TV, I guess I'll get my baby back. And so when Samantha ends up getting her baby from Kathy, Samantha's like, yeah, I know I'm crazy, and I know it's kind of weird for me to just re-ask for my baby. So it seems that a lot of times that Samantha and Campbell, if her reaching Justin may not work out, it seems that Samantha and Campbell may go on to have a relationship between them work out, because Campbell is to go on and smoke a cigarette, and Samantha goes out with him to just kind of chat about the past and what Justin was in the past, and that he would go on and play with pine cones and sticks and whatever, and like the younger version of this guy before he was to go on and talk about pigs and slaughtering and whatever, to see that this guy wasn't always like this. So Samantha tries to talk to Justin and is to try to convince him that it's like, well, hey, like you and I have a child together, and like there's a family here, and so on and so forth, and nothing that Samantha's going to say is going to convince Justin to be like, oh no, like I'm different now. You've convinced me. Thank God for you coming in here and saying all these magically delicious words that are to change me to be back to who I was. So, again, stuff fails. So, it ends up getting later and later and later to try and break or figure out a way to talk to Justin. So, we have also at some point that the cabin ends up losing power. And so Andrew is to come up to Justin's room and give him a lamp. And Andrew ends up having this story to Justin about how Andrew would have given Justin this lava lamp because Andrew assumed that Justin was afraid of the dark. But then, come to find out, Justin was sharing his room with Campbell, and Campbell was afraid of the lava lamp, and so, like, that kind of, like, canceled one and another out. So, but at least, like, hey, you could appreciate the attempt, right, from Andrew. So, come to find out, we have our characters who notice that there is somebody over by this swing set. And so Jimmy's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go on and see what this is. And we have Jimmy that investigates, and come to find out, we have this fox girl that appears and is to have this knife and ends up cutting Jimmy right in the chest, and Jimmy drops. Jimmy was built as this Marine character, and he seemed very high intelligent, very smart, very clever, and this guy, one swipe of a knife, and down he goes. Not much of a real defense, just like, well, whip. So now Jimmy is basically out, and so like, oh my god, like, let's go out and let's investigate what happened to Jimmy. Let's call out for him. And when it seems that they end up getting no answer, they're like, okay, like, let's go on and let's just try to, like, go through the house and find out anything that we can, like, make a weapon out of. Like, we had Andrew, Andrew, that goes with his golf club and goes out there, is like, okay, like, let's go on and, like, let's see what happened to Jimmy. Come to find out, they have at one point where Jimmy finally does make his way back to the cabin, and he is to be one tattoo less, because at one point one of the Jackals ends up trying to break through this door to try to unlock the door, and is to also grab onto Samantha's hand to give her the tattoo of Jimmy so that way they know he's dead. But Jimmy ends up coming back to the front door of this cabin, and they let him in, but also a jackal ends up coming in, and they end up having to fight him off. We have Kathy, who has this very hot pan that she ends up flinging this hot pan in this guy's face, and they end up having to like take these items and like these candlesticks and all these like hammers and all kinds of stuff to try to kill this guy off. But Jimmy ends up getting pushed back into, I'm assuming, his room, where Jimmy just dies. And I'm like, again, there could have been a possibility that this guy, you could have taped him up, he could have been fine. Andrew is asking Jimmy, it's like, well, hey, like, let's make a run for the hospital. And Jimmy's like, no, there's not enough time. I'm going to die. And so he does. And I'm like, oh my god. What? Out of the one bit of character that I could have thought, like, here's a chance. Here's going to be a character. The Marine character is going to, like, even things out for the good guys, but he does nowhere near anything of that because he was caught off guard, supposedly. So now after we've gotten and said all of that, so we have Justin at one point who is howling, realizing that his men are trying to make their way in, and so he's calling out to them and they're responding, so it's like, aha, like, you're still alive and you're out there, okay, great. So the family is like, oh my god, like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna get out of here? And plus also, Andrew is kind of looking at the numbers, and it's like, well, like, I don't think there's that many guys out there right now, but at some point there'll be more. So what they attempt to do is they come up with a plan. So Andrew is going to go in the backyard and is to pretend to hand over Justin to the Jackals, as Campbell is going to go through the front door and run to the nearest house, gas station, something, and call for help. Because I guess these guys also don't have cell phones or anything at all that works as far as reception whatsoever. These people don't have a landline. Plus also, I'm sure whatever kind of power or wires or whatever that they had is all dead, because traditional horror movie would tell you that. So, like, Wi-Fi access, nothing works here. So Andrew goes out to present Justin to these guys, and Campbell's like, okay, I'm gonna run out of here. And Andrew is to pretend to offer this guy up, but Andrew is also asking these Jackals, it's like, well, like, I'm going to give you my sunlight and you're going to leave me alone. You're going to go on and go away, right? It seems like the Jackals are saying absolutely nothing. It's like, why would we have to guarantee anything? What difference would it make? So it seems that Andrew is getting no word from these guys as like a deal or a bargain or anything. And so Andrew just runs Justin right back into the cabin, and he is desperately banging on this door to have them let him in. As we have Samantha and Kathy, who are of course being like very distracted with their own things, and so they run to open the door to try and save Andrew, and Andrew ends up getting jumped by somebody, and so Samantha ends up having this torch and's like, yeah, yeah. So Andrew and Justin end up getting back into the house. And so Samantha is to have this plan that they need to keep Justin and to not go on and give him up. Because if they give Justin up, that is the one bargaining chip that they are giving away. And then after that, like, these guys can go on and do whatever they need to kill the rest of these characters off. They can, like, burn down the house, they could bring in explosives, they can do whatever after that, because the one bargaining chip, the one factor to try to keep Justin alive in this cabin is now gone because he's no longer in the cabin. So we continue to have at some point certain characters are like little minion guys are to try to break into this place, and they of course end up easily getting taken down one way or the other. But so Campbell is to run off. Campbell's to run off. So Campbell, it seems, is to have this like Swiss Army knife, this little knife, and he is to run off to find these vehicles. And he's hoping, like, hopefully there's going to be some like car keys in this vehicle. Come to find out there isn't. But then we have the Jackals who notice that Campbell is to be looking through these vehicles. So the Jackals start walking on to their vehicles, and so Campbell thinks that they didn't see him, and so he hides underneath one of the vehicles. And so we have one of the vans that is to park right in front of this truck, and it's to put its high beams on. And so the other van parks in front of the truck, turns its high beams on, and so Campbell's like, oh, obviously they know I'm there. So Campbell starts sliding out, and the guy ends up booting the guy in the face, knocking him out. So Campbell ends up getting dragged to this swing set, where they end up tying him to this swing set in a kind of crucifix-like manner. And so now Campbell is hung there, and here's like the interesting or creative part that I see here. So the Jackals are trying to use Campbell as either a bargaining tool or just like, hey guys, you better come out here anyways, because you're all gonna f***ing die. So as Andrew is to be, I think, distracted, I think that this is a scene where Andrew is to try to talk to Justin, and then Andrew brings Justin down and like ties him to this stairwell to kind of be back and forthing whether or not that they should give up Justin or not. So Andrew's busy one way or the other. So what they end up doing is they put gasoline to Campbell's hand as Kathy and Samantha are watching, and then they light up Campbell's hand. And so Campbell's hand is now on fire, of course, like I just said. So, why repeat that? So, Kathy is watching in horror as her son is being tortured. So, as they, of course, are to go on and then light up the other hand, they're just watching as this guy is going to die slowly but surely. Then they go on and they pour gasoline on top of Campbell's head. And then Kathy can no longer take this. So Kathy runs on, realizing that she can be no crouching tiger, hidden dragon thing here, to try and stop anything. So Kathy instead just joins her son out there to just be grabbed and to be held. So she'll just get held out there. And I'm like, why? What would you have gone on and done? Like, either way, it's not like she could, like, say, it's like, well, take me instead. Because what difference does it make? You all would have died either way. They would have just been like, oh, wow, like, you're right. Like, I think we should take her instead and just save Campbell and just let him go. No. So Kathy runs out there to just kind of like, oh, my baby, oh, no. But really, there's nothing for her to do. So at this point, we have Andrew coming back to see what is to happen to his own son, as his own son has been crying out for his dad for I don't know how long now. Andrew is to now have this pickaxe and this knife attached to it, and he's gonna go out there and be like, yeah, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna take these guys down. This whole group of guys that I'm obviously outnumbered, but like, I just have the will to survive. I just have, like, this is my family. Like, we just have this moment where it's like against the odds, this guy is to hope to be able to just defy every possible thing. So we have Andrew going out there with this axe, swinging away, and so he ends up, I think, getting a good couple licks on certain guys, but really this is like all for naught here. And so we then have Andrew, who is to get stabbed multiple times in the back and then in the chest. And then Andrew is to turn to this jackal leader and tell him that I am the father. I am the father. And then he dies. Trying to, like, be defiant to the very end of, like, well, like, you didn't raise this guy, I did. So we also have Kathy that ends up getting like cut in the throat. Campbell is to probably die from his burn wounds. So now the only two characters we have left are Samantha and Justin, because again, Jimmy had died metaphorically slipping on a banana peel. So what good is he gonna be for the rest of this film? So Justin then finally turns to Samantha and is to tell her, like, Samantha, like, I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna save you. So, you know what, like Samantha, just let me free, like, cut my rope, or cut my tape, and, like, release me, and while I'm gonna go out there and rejoin my my cult, like, I'm going to give you, like, a head start to just run out of here, like, grab the baby and get out of here. Like, it's me, like, it's Justin, I'm going to help you. So Samantha is to think it's like, well, it's either this or it's death. So what else? So Samantha then is to untie Justin, let him go out to his jackals, and Samantha takes the baby and makes a run for it. And so Samantha is to all of a sudden see this car in this road, and Samantha's like, "Oh my god, yeah, please help me!" And we end up seeing behind Samantha one of the Jackals, and that's how the movie ends. I'm like, "Oh, what? You can't give me a definitive ending?" How it should have ended was what they should have done is Samantha goes on to kind of wave this car down, and come to find out it's Justin in his jackal costume, and like that's how they end the movie, with like Justin being in the car like, "Oh hey, yeah," like, and that's how they should have ended the film, with there being like the one way of which that this girl was to possibly survive uh, be the like the way she is to have ended. Because we could have gone on and had like one character who kind of like we could have one of these members who just kind of continue to just drive around consistently to see if any of these people from this family escaped, kind of scoop them up and then kill them off. They could have played it out that way. Uh, but yeah, so that's how the movie ends. I think I'm gonna go on and try to get out of here. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I did forget about. There were certain scenes where I probably didn't go on and do them in the absolute order of how they all came out, but I went on and just kind of mentioned certain scenes in this film, and so you can kind of correct the order when you go on and either watch this, or you can kind of correct the order via the comment section, because because when really looking at it, I always love another comment on a video, because more than likely I'll just go on and be like, "Ah, okay, great, well, there's nothing I'm going to do about it now, because I'm never going to go on and re-review this movie, as well as a number of other things." So with that said, yeah, I'm just going to go on and get out of here. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about this movie and so on and so forth. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.